Hey, welcome to Sparks. Figured I'd take you to one of my favorite spots to talk about this idea of encouragement today. This is one of my favorite places. It's one of my favorite fishing spots. It's a neighborhood I would love to live in if I had the chance. But wanted to talk to you today about this topic of encouragement. It's a little windy, so I'm hoping the sound doesn't mess us up. But dogs and kids are some of my favorite people. And the reason for that is kids are pretty honest and they can be brutally honest sometimes, but they're authentic. They'll tell you how they feel. They'll tell you what's on their mind. They'll tell you, what's going on. And dogs are like, look, they only want to please you, right? This is their whole purpose. And I mean, dogs are the only animals that I know that love you more than they love themselves. So, but they all respond, dogs and kids respond well to encouragement and praise. And I think we all need that from time to time, either because of what life throws at us that's bad, that we need some help from others, or just everybody likes to hear something good said to them or about them. And some of that might be we're all a little insecure, maybe lacking some self-confidence, maybe we're trying something new, maybe we're doing something that we're not very good at intuitively, and so we need some encouragement to do those kinds of things. And there's real value in that. And one of the things that we've done in our life group recently has been to sit around and talk a little bit about what it means to be a good friend. And one of the reasons we created this life group was so that there would be a space and a place for kids in the group to feel like they were encouraged and feel like they were protected, and somebody'd stand up for them when they needed it, and they could trust the members of the group if something happened, that they would get the kind of support that they would need, so we had these conversations about what it means to be a good friend, and part of that is this notion of encouragement, right? And so how do you be a good friend? How does that happen? Well, one of the ways that you can do that, there's this great book, and your parents have probably read it. You may have read it too, but it's called The 5 Love Languages. And the 5 love languages basically say, hey, we all receive love in different ways. And so there's 5 of them, right? There's gift giving, there's acts of service, there's physical touch, there's words of affirmation, and quality time, right? And so what happens, the way this works is we tend to give love to other people in the way that we like to receive it. And the way the book kind of talks about, hey, there's people have more than one love language, but we tend to sort of extend love to other people based on how we want to get it from them. So, but that can get tricky with relationships or with friendships, right? Because you need to know that that person's love language may be different from yours. So, for example, if I give my wife flowers, which would be gift giving, but her love language is quality time or acts of service, for example, she may not receive those flowers in the same way that I want her to receive them, right? She might be happier if I detailed her car or cleaned the kitchen or mowed the lawn or did something. Acts of service means I receive love when you're doing things for me. So we have to be careful to make sure that the language that we're using is the one that's going to get best received, right? You see how that works? And because most people don't have one single love language, they have multiple languages, sometimes all 5, but most of the time it's 2. Being a good friend means sort of understanding and learning what those love languages are, right? But even if you don't know the person, you can still sort of provide this notion of encouragement in meaningful ways, even if you don't know the person, you just met them for the first time, right? So we have to be mindful of that idea, because that's really how encouraging people and affirming them is probably, at least in my mind, the best way I know to model God's love for us in an everyday way, right? And it doesn't have to be all that elaborate. It doesn't have to be all that big of a deal. It doesn't have to be, these magnanimous gestures of buying stuff and that's really expensive or making a big deal out of it. It can be really simple, right? It can be just sort of words of encouragement for somebody like, hey, keep going. You can do it. Nice job, nice shoes, good haircut, right? It could be really, really simple stuff. And boys sometimes have a little bit more trouble with this than girls, because they can be kind of snarky and sarcastic, and you don't want to get all sappy with saying good things about your friends. You're gonna lose your man card or something, right? You're gonna make fun of you. But even then, you can still do it. You can still be encouraging, even in boy language, right? That maybe you just say, hey, nice shot, or hey, you're really good at math. Hey, you're really good at explaining stuff to people. So there's ways that you can do this in an informal way that's relatively easy to do. And so the 5 love languages is really important, because I think that gives us a lot of insight into how to be encouraging to other people. But there's never any question that we should be encouraging to other people. And so with a spark like this, you might be wondering, okay, are there any stories in the Bible that help me to understand how to be a better encourager, or why encouragement is important? Because again, we like to hear it. We like to, especially when we're going through a rough time, but even normally we would feel good about that kind of thing. And I can think of 2 right off the top of my head, stories in the Bible that relate to encouragement. And the first one I think of is Joshua. And I don't know how many of you have read the story of Joshua, but think about, I think of Joshua, for those of you that are football fans, I think of Joshua as the guy, kind of like the guy who takes over for Tom Brady in football when he retires, right? You're gonna get to be the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or the New England Patriots, of arguably one of the greatest of all time players in the history of the NFL. Oof, that's a tall order. Or you're gonna be the coach that takes over for Bill Belichick when he finally gives up that job or that role. Man, that's a lot of pressure. That's a big shadow is being cast there. Joshua was the guy who had to take over for Moses, right? Which is arguably one of the biggest leaders and greatest figures in the Bible, right? And so he gets to take over for him after Moses dies, and God says, hey, you're gonna do this job now. And yeah, I know there's these people that have been walking around the desert for 40 years, and you got to take them to the promised land because they've been promised a better life, and it hasn't happened yet. Whoa, this dude's, I don't know if I can do this job, right? And so God has to encourage him multiple times. That phrase, be strong and courageous, that you may hear. See, God often puts us in those positions to do big things, or things that we don't think we can handle. And that's one of the ways that we grow, right? But he's never going to put you in a position where you're going to fail. And he's not going to just sort of leave you there and say, okay, go do this, and then leave you hanging. He's there, right? He's with you, and he's encouraging you in different ways. You just have to be mindful of what those things are, right? So Joshua's a good example of that. And he does it, right? He encourages them, and Joshua does the work, and right, he brings the Israelites to the promised land, and there's a whole rest of the story that goes along with that. But that's one good example. The other example that you may not know about is a guy named Barnabas, right? And Barnabas is this guy who was always encouraging people. He was always sort of affirming them, and in fact, I think he was described in the Bible as the son of encouragement. And so there's this role that he plays even among the disciples, right? They're going off and they're spreading the gospel and they're growing the church, and he's behind the scenes, connecting people to each other and affirming them and saying, hey, this is a good thing. You're a good guy. You can do this. You've got great talent, right? He does this over and over and over again. And even among the disciples, right, when they weren't so sure about Paul, because Paul had that conversion experience, Barnabas kind of went to bat for Paul, saying, no, you guys, he's going to be okay. This is going to work. And he does it again in the story with John Mark, where John Mark bailed on the disciples at one point when he's supposed to meet up with them, and he didn't do it. And so now the disciples are like, I don't want to take a chance on this guy. This guy's going to bail on us again. And Barnabas goes, hey, no, I'll take him under my wing. I'll travel with him. It'll work. We'll spread the gospel, and right. And so Barnabas represents this ultimate cheerleader, kind of like your grandmother, your grandfather, where you can do no wrong in your grandfather's eyes or your grandmother's eyes, no matter what it is, and they're always finding the positive. They're always finding the way to affirm you, and I think that's how that's how God sees us, right? Like a grandparent. And so these are two examples where I think you find a lot of encouragement opportunities in the Bible. But let me give you a couple of other examples where the real life, right, that happen to actual people. In some professions, they have this phrase, like in policing and in construction and some other jobs, they have something called an attaboy. An attaboy is wordplay for that a boy or way to go. It's when somebody does something good, you recognize them, right? You're the boss, you're the supervisor. Hey, nice job, way to go, do this again, or that kind of thing. Well, let me give you a couple of simple examples, right, of how to give an attaboy to somebody, how to be encouraging to somebody, how to be affirming to somebody. So my wife is often, finding herself and meeting people, and maybe she's got a piece of jewelry that she likes, and she's at the checkout stand, and someone says, hey, this is a really beautiful bracelet, a really beautiful necklace, whatever. She'll take it off and give it to him, right? Little simple thing. No, I want you to have it, right? This will bless you. Or my son at basketball practice, when kids are doing suicides. I don't know if you know what suicides are, but they're like sprinting drills where you go part of the way up the court and back and forth and back and forth. It's exhausting, right? Connor's sitting there high-fiving the guys if he doesn't have to do the suicides. He's high-fiving the guys that are doing it, always encouraging them, right? Or he's high-fiving the kid when he shoots a free throw. And the coaches notice this, and they're like, look, you should do what Connor's doing. And all of a sudden all the other teammates are high-fiving each other, trying to keep each other, right, engaged and encouraged. Connor even went so far, my son Connor even went so far as when another player on another team during a game was shooting a free throw, he gives the guy a high five, and the kid's like, what in the world, right? And so, but it's not about the score, right? It's about us developing as people. It's not about the competitiveness and about winning or losing. It's about, hey, we're all in this. We're all developing. We're all growing. There's ways to do this, right? So there's lots of different examples. And it doesn't have to be, like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be elaborate. You just have to be intentional about it, and you have to mean it when you say it. But there's lots of ways for you to go around and encouraging people or giving them an attaboy. So I'd encourage you to think about that. I'd encourage you to read those stories in the Bible about Barnabas and about Joshua. And so go give an attaboy, and then let's talk about it. Put your comments of what you did in the comments section below, and let's kind of get a group discussion going about that. All right? Talk to you soon.